Hey, everybody. Today we are here with Jamie Seeker of seekersolutions.com. And she's going to be telling us all about what she does as being the founder of Seeker Solutions. The cool thing about it is your last name is Seeker. And Seeker Solutions is actually what you do. It's a really cute name from a marketing standpoint. I absolutely love it. When people try to take their last names and turn it into something, a lot of times it just doesn't work. It's Bradshaw.com and you don't really get it. But Seeker Solutions, it really has a unique ring. So it was one of the first things I saw right away. I loved your marketing. I loved all your pictures. It really personalized who you are and what you do. So for our listeners at a high level, why don't you just tell us a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. So we are an operations management consulting firm, and we help small, medium-sized business owners as they grow and scale. When they kind of hit that bottleneck to where they're wearing all the hats and they can see that they are the one holding up everything, we offer solutions that you can outsource. So anything you would think of a CEO type or COO duties, that's really what we do. And we have, high level solutions that address that, and everywhere from financial management to social media to human resources when you start hiring and managing people, and strategic planning, things like that. So those are pretty much everything that we cover in the operation.
So you kind of go in and help them figure out their bottleneck, and it's not one, it's probably 10 or 15 bottlenecks that are causing these businesses not to really scale at the level that they want to. And then what do? You put the butts in the seats to help with this, or do you lay out a plan of what they need to do to execute with this?
Well, that's a really good question. Most of the time we come in asking, what do they need? Most business owners we find know exactly what the problem is, and they know exactly how they want to fix it. It's just they get sucked into all the day-to-day, and the execution of it gets lost somewhere. And so we actually come in, some of them don't know. So yes, to answer that question, our job is to come in, do an assessment, figure out what the biggest pain points are, what some of those gaps are, and then figure out a strategy on how to fill those things. Some of that might be that they have internal resources already that we need to reallocate toward filling these gaps and making it more of a priority. Some of it is hiring from the outside and saying, hey, you need X, Y, and Z positions. You need to take this stuff off your plate. This is something that somebody else can do. And some of it is we take care of those responsibilities for you as
Okay,
a
that's
party
interesting.
outsourced
That's a little twist I don't normally see. So it's interesting. You have a background. You ran an OBGYN office. So how did you make the shift from that into this world that you're in now?
Well, that's a really good question. So that was my first time working in a small business, and I loved seeing the immediate impact that I had there. So it kind of started my, love for that. But we were going through a transition. One doctor was retiring, the other partner was taking over as the main owner. And I was brought on to kind of help with that transition and really make that seamless, put processes in place and put a team together and that kind of stuff, and just make sure everything was really seamless. And so when we did that, it took about a year to do, because she stayed on, and the doctor that was retiring kind of went out of the owner seat. The new doctor went in, and she stayed on for another year to help the practice continue and then kind of transition out. And so once we got in and got settled and the new owner was in, she was going to take a different role as business owner. And so we kind of transitioned her into that seat, and I pretty much kind of, seamlessly went out. But the cool part about that was the relationships that I had and with other vendors and other businesses that kind of did the same thing, were in the industry. A lot of them were talking to me about, well, what are your next steps? What are you going to do? And a lot of them were asking me because they wanted me to come. They were actively recruiting me as business owners, and they didn't exactly have a position necessarily, but they were asking me what my next steps were. And I took a lot of lunches and coffees and pretty much interviewed at a lot of my colleagues' offices. And I really thought that was not normal. And it got my attention. And so when I was really thinking about what I wanted to do next, I I kind of put all of those ideas out and said, I think I'm selling something here, but I don't know what it is. And I need to take my time and identify that and really, consider these offers that I'm getting and think about, well, I feel like I have all the cards in my deck, and I can determine my next steps. And so it was really circumstantial how I transitioned into owning my own business. And that was a really big part of it. And so I really kind of decided, instead of going to work for any one of them, I would go ahead and go to work for myself and become an expert and have all of them, work with all of them. And so that's really how I started up my practice. Which is
so, and you said something in that. You said, I really sort of transitioned myself out. Any good consultant, any good coach, at some level, if you're doing your job and you're doing it well, it's you're doing it where you're phasing yourself out. And that's like what we talk about a lot here is you're not supposed to stick with any, one coach or one person along the way of your CEO journey. Sometimes you need a lot of different ones, and somebody may need operations help or somebody may need HR help. But if you're doing your job well, you should be able to phase yourself out and get them operationally set or set in their people department and move on. Is that what you think? Is that how you believe as well?
Well, yeah, I think without knowing, I think that was kind of a philosophy that I had adopted as a leader, as somebody who throughout my career, I was always trying to train somebody up to replace me, and really grow in that way and bring others along and help them grow as well. And so I wasn't a consultant there. I was actually the operations director, but I also think that my job was to put things into place to where everything wasn't, reliant on me. And so if I was taken away, it didn't collapse and fall. It needed to be sustainable. So I think just the fact that I had that mentality anyway, just transitioned really well into being a consultant and being somebody who's third party, to not go from everything on relying on the owner to everything them relying on us. I don't think that's sustainable for anything. And so I think there's something really quite true about what you're saying. And I think it's different too for everything. We kind of have our solution set up to where we can transition in for a small amount of time to get, point A to point B and be a good transition, or we can be a good long-term partner as well. And we've seen it. But I think the thing that you said there is, if we're staying in one place for very long, then we're probably not setting them up to not be sustainable, right? And so it's even if we stay on long term as consultants, we're really changing and evolving with our role and what their need is, and we do kind of grow. We see that, and I think that that's just a sign of a good leader.
Yeah. Okay, well, in your biography, you say that you've experienced the ups and downs of the economy and learned to meet the obstacles that organizations face today. Yes, I did research you. What are the obstacles that organizations are facing today? What are the top ones that you see? Give us the top three.
So that's a really good question. I think organizations in general are having different issues than what our specific organizations that we work with may be different. So I'll speak to our clientele and what we work with, which is small, medium-sized businesses. And this might not be a challenge that is for today's time per se, but it's almost like a universal challenge. And that is that I think entrepreneurs have certain personality traits, and to want to create something and be in charge and really build it on your own, you have to have a sort of I can do it mentality, and I can do it myself. And I think one of the biggest the top one I would say is that mentality of we do it alone. We don't lean on other people to get help there. And so I think that because of our personality traits, we do really well with things. We usually make the right decisions. We can get things done efficiently. We have that type of get it done mentality and skill set, but sometimes it can work against us on the other side when it does get too big and we grow it to a point where, we really do need to rely on other people. Sometimes we don't ask for help and we don't look outward for that. So I think that might be the top one. That's a universal. The second thing is right now the economy's in a kind of a weird place. And by weird, I mean, we're not seeing a whole lot of spending in the retail side of things. People are very conservative with things. We're not having the same challenges that we faced a couple of years ago with pandemic, with supply chain or other things. Like those were challenges that when we talk about past and what we've learned, there's been so many things that we've seen. But right now it's just an uncertainty that we're seeing in the marketplace where because sales are trending very, very differently, we don't really know what to do with our expenses either. And so I'm finding that a lot of our clients are starting to be conservative with their spending, and then that would be the second thing. And then the third thing would be that trickles into human resources and how we manage our teams and our employees. And we've in I would say the last year, we have grown teams immediately. Like kind of when we got out of the pandemic, it was like everybody went back out into the marketplace. People were spending money, and we see all this happening with having to raise, we were seeing inflation happening and all this other stuff. We're watching what's going on, but that's really affecting our workers and human resources. And so now we're at a point where people are needing to hire, but there's not necessarily the workforce to pull from. Unemployment rates are pretty low, but also it's just a weird place to be right now with HR. And I think one of the biggest challenges is seeing that we had a big explosion and now we're having to like scale back because we're not really sure what the market is going to do. And so we did this really, really fast growing of teams. And now we're seeing employers pull back as well. So it's like, it's a really tough place to be as a manager, as a leader, especially when you care about the people that you work with and wanting to support and grow them in their careers and their lives. But, it's tough to watch that happening because you also have to make the right business decisions, and watching what's happening in sales is really kind of unpredictable. So it's hard to offer that stability in the workforce as well with your employees. So those are three, I think.
Yeah,
really
there's a lot to unpack there. So that was a lot of really great stuff. So let's talk about the first point. Owners and CEOs, they love to do it alone. You're an owner, I'm an owner, right? And I do remember like the beginnings of nobody can do it as good as me. Nobody's going to do it as fast as me. By the time I explain it to somebody else, I can already have it done. So why even bother? I'll just get it done. But then it snowballs, and it is a really, really tough place. And, what we do at the Shift Spot, we are CEO coaching and peer advisory community. So we kind of work together with our peers to help everybody with the same problems that they experience. And then we also kind of coach our CEOs on some of the things you do, but a lot of them, it's more about the top 6 problems that businesses like really struggle in, right? Finances, processes and systems, people. You've seen this movie, right? So we've kind of created that community so that people don't have to go at it alone. But it's really, really hard to look yourself in the eye and say, like, enough is enough. I am doing something that I can be paying an admin to do. This is ridiculous. So one of the first things that we kind of look at with our CEOs and owners is just like, what are the things you enjoy doing? Because we're about balance here. And, I can type up a contract faster than anybody. I can send the best marketing emails in the world, but is that the best like use of my time? So we have to like really sit down and look at like, what do we love doing? And what are we good at, but don't love doing? And what are we good at, but don't, and do love doing? And you start to just find that I need this person to take over this or this person to take over this so that CEO is doing more of what they love. I mean, can you speak about CEOs today just kind of doing everything and not loving a lot of it? I mean, we hear a lot of burnout going on. We hear a lot of, I don't want to scale anymore. I don't want to grow. I actually want to shrink because, I don't like doing this much work. I'm not having fun anymore. This was supposed to be fun, So what are your thoughts there?
That's exactly our message. And that's what we've seen as well. Very common and kind of what I've talked about in the past is that it's not just something I see in one or two or it's a common theme. This is like 100% of the people that we interface with gets to that point at some point in their entrepreneur journey. And so I think that that is where we start as well, is really starting to ask questions and get to know the person. Why did you get into this in the first place? What is your long-term vision? Where do you see yourself? What does that next step look like to you? And let's evaluate what you're doing right now. Do the two align? And most of the time they don't. And, you pretty much named all that. So in, not trying to repeat any of that, I would say the only thing that I would add to that really is that they really wait too long, and they come to us and it's so drastic and almost dramatic. It's like, I'm either going to die or, we have to make some major changes. And so I called you because you're like my last ditch effort. And we're like, well, why did we wait so long? Why, how did we get here? Like either it's this or this. Like there's got to be some warning signs along the way. And to where we can be proactive, and it's not this or that, like we're going to close down and shut business, or, or something major's got to change. It's like, no, it's actually just a few little minor things that need to change. It's going to make a major difference. And we do start there. What are your strengths? What should you be doing? And yes, you can, but are you the right person to be doing? Because you may have somebody right next to you who could take over a lot of that stuff, would alleviate so many of those feelings. And when I think too, when the owner is feeling energized, full of vision and like drive and knowing the direction that they're going, it really changes the entire culture of the company as well, because we tend to see that the employees and everybody around mirror that owner. And so I think that getting them to a place where they feel energized again, passionate again, why they started it in the first place is really key. And a lot of that has to do with everyday, tasks and responsibilities and reassigning those. And it is hard, because I think the biggest thing that stood out to me also with what you said is we don't really have that choice. Nobody can do it better. Nobody can do it as fast, as efficient. It's going to take longer for me to train. And even if they get to that point, a common thing that we see is, okay, you convinced me, I can delegate it. So they delegate it, and the person that they delegate it to doesn't do it the way you want them to. Or, maybe they even make mistakes and it's not, correct. But then it's like, see, this is why I don't do that. And you take it back. So we take it back too. And I think that that's the second kind of phase into where we step in, is we know that that's also something that's going to happen, and we don't really allow you to get there. It's just this unwavering vision of like, this is the direction that you're going. And if you take it back, you take a step back. And the thing is, I think the other message that we're not saying is it's okay to scale back. If that's what you truly want to do, guess what? You started this company, you own it, you get to decide the direction you want to go. So if what you want to do is not grow and become this, multi-billion-dollar company, which is what you dreamed of when you first started, but you're really kind of learning and growing and saying, you know what, I think I can maximize my profitability by staying small. Let's maximize that and minimize, the expenses and really stay right here. That's where I'm comfortable. I think that there's an acceptance there to realize that you're allowed to change your mind. And if your goals change, that's okay too. And let's put processes in place to keep you there. And we, of course, weigh pros and cons of doing either. But really just getting them to really say, okay, you have your dreams, but what's your reality? And what are you really doing? And does that align? And maybe sometimes your dreams change, because sometimes they're not willing to change their reality to get to their dreams. So there has to be that acceptance of, all right, well, you're not willing to do what it takes to live that dream. So let's look at what this direction takes you. And is that really where you want to go? And most of the time it's also no. So there's some tweaking that we need to do. But I think that's also a valid part of the conversation that we have with owners, is really just owning and accepting what their reality is and seeing if that's truly in alignment with what they started with.
And, back to your other 2 points, like rewinding a little bit, I think that's where spending and HR kind of collide, because I see a lot of successful businesses that have been around for a while, but what they do is it gets busy and they hire a bunch, and then you get into a weird spot like we are now. And I know what you're saying. This is a weird time all around. Interest rates are super high, and people want to buy a home, but they don't want to buy a home. They're like, I need to have this, car, but I don't know if I need this car. Like, I mean, I've never seen so much, like everybody's so wishy-washy. And I do think that on election years next year, I think it's probably going to get a little bit worse, even because in like sales historically, people just kind of like wait on the sidelines during election years. And it doesn't really matter if a Republican or a Democrat gets it. Once they're in office, everything kind of goes back to normal. But leading up to it, it becomes quiet as a lark. So then a lot of businesses panic and they get rid of their number one overhead, which tends to be people. And then they let some really good people go that need jobs that they probably shouldn't have let go. And they let the fear creep in and the panic creep in. And those people go find other jobs and they're gone. So you've lost good people. Then you're in this sort of wheelhouse. Now I got to find new people. So then the market picks up again, right? So whoever gets in office gets in office. I'm just giving an example, right? So, then whatever the extenuating circumstances, it passes. And then it gets busy again and you need to rehire again. And I watch this play out in businesses over and over and over. So what do you say to businesses who are, they're scared or they're nervous or they have that monkey on their back of the high overhead with the people, and you don't know what's going to happen? What do you do at this time? What would you recommend to a business during this time to like hang on to the right people and not freak out?
Yeah, I think that's a tough answer. And I don't think it's the same for everyone. I think it varies based on, who the business is and what their circumstances are. And, sometimes it's a black and white, spreadsheet issue where you really are spending more than you're making and you have to do this, otherwise your business will close. So I guess it's hard to talk about the right now, and what we try to do is plan for the rainy day before it ever happens. And so
Right.
in times of plenty, when the economy is really great, when you are going through the boom, it's what types of practices do you have in place to prepare you for these times? Because this is the roller coaster that we usually see in small businesses, even medium-sized businesses. And what we try to get to is this. And the only way to do that is to manage the times regardless of what the circumstances are. So putting good strategies, good business philosophies into place that really stand the test of time. And that's more of a proactive approach. So yes, if we come in right now, there's not much we can do about the past, but it's talking about, okay, what can we manage? How do we trim the fat right now? Because it may be very necessary for your company, but there may be appropriate times where it is appropriate for you to come back and take some things back. And what can you handle on your plate so that you can maintain? I've had to do it as a business owner. I've had to, tap into all of my resources, all of the things, take on other things to where I was able to keep on my team, during those times. And that 100% had to do with the work that we did ahead of time. Is that one thing is 100% certain, is that we will have uncertainty in the economy, in your sales, in everything. And there will be ups and there will be downs, peaks and valleys. And that's something that will 100% happen. So I think the answer really becomes planning for that. But in terms of right now, the encouragement really just is looking at it as a bigger picture, not as a today problem. Let's look at this. Okay, today, this is what we're going through. But if you want to be here tomorrow, what are some of the things that are really important to you as a company? And really just say, what are necessities? And sometimes some of the extra things are bonuses that you can probably do without, and hopefully it's not falling within HR and having to slash your workforce, but it's really facilitating conversations about really grasping toward your mission, your vision, and your values. And when you go back to that and you stick toward those things, you maybe will make different decisions than your circumstances are providing right now. Like you tend to be held hostage to whatever situation you're in your circumstance. And we really try to look beyond that and say, what is your company here to do? What's important to you and how you do it? And where do you want to go right now? And if it had nothing to do with your circumstances. And usually when you have those kind of logical decisions, it helps with the emotional part of the decision making.
Yeah, I agree. So it seems like you've got it all together. And it seems like, the top failures that companies have. So tell us about one of your failures. How did you handle it? How did you turn it around? We all have failures. And I always say that I don't believe that we fail at anything. We give 100% to or learn something from. So share with us, something that you really screwed up and you wish you could, now that you can help somebody else.
Yeah, I mean, thank you, first of all, for saying that I look like I have it all together. But I think you're right. I think that I am where I am today because of what I've experienced, and failing forward, is kind of what we say. And I think when I was young in my career, I was very driven. I was very driven. I had that mentality of, I am the best, I'm the best one here. I can do it better than everyone else. Like I said, same entrepreneurial personality. Who knew that that was going to play out the way that it did, a couple decades later. But yeah, when I first started, I think because I had a pretty vast variety of skill sets that translated really well in different things, you couldn't really put me in a box. I don't know that I talk to a lot of people now in my career that knew me then who were just like totally scared of me and afraid, and I think it's so funny because the crazy thing is, like, I still have relationships with them now, so there was at least some sort of like relational thing that was happening, but when it came to work, it was very intimidating. And so I'm not saying necessarily that I failed in that area, but I think I would learn from that and do that differently. There was an era which was giving off like people were afraid to work with me. And I think it had a lot to do with that. I was very self-assured, right or wrong. I'm not saying I was right in the decisions that I was making or anything like that, but I was very sure of what I was doing, what I was all about, and all that kind of thing. And I think that that was very unsettling maybe to other departments or other areas of people that I worked with, that maybe made it hard for them to work with. I found it very easy to work with everyone. I didn't have any problems per se. Like, I never had any kind of arch enemies at work or anything like that. But I think that there was definitely an air of which that I handled myself at work that maybe wasn't necessarily, it was one snapshot of who I am. But I think that I'm much more, care a lot more about what people think, and to know that somebody kind of ran the other way when I was walking down the hall is like, really? Like, why? And they really can't tell me anything that like I did anything inappropriate or anything like that. But if I could go back and kind of see it from a different perspective in that way, like I said, I think learning about it now, because I still have those relationships with those people, I think kind of speaks to maybe that fear being surface level or whatever. But at the same time, I think it probably made a big difference in my journey, and it didn't need to. So yeah.
And it's interesting. I totally get what you're saying. Like I came out of the womb just confident with myself. I was doing modeling, shows at 2 years old. Thanks, Mom. So I just like naturally kind of had this aura about myself. And I have had people say that to me throughout my career, which as an individual, it's okay. But as a leader or an owner, the people and your staff, they pick up on the vibe you're putting out. And you can't be like that. You can't be, overt in any one direction as an owner or leader. We've got this client who owns a company, and I don't want to say what they do, but it's not the most glamorous industry. It's quite boring. But the owner himself is really short, and he's almost depressed in his talking, and he just really is monotone. And you get on with his staff, and they literally are like, they all look like they want to pull out a knife and just cut themselves in the wrist. I mean, they just look miserable. And I don't think he realizes how much he influences how they are showing up. And I think what you're saying is, look, I was this person and I learned from this, because you had to, as a leader, you would probably turn away a lot of potentially good, employees, good hires, good business opportunities, all of those things. You have to start thinking, and now more than ever, because people want to be met with exactly where they are anymore. Like, this is a new era where, like, before it used to be like, I'm paying the money, you're getting hired, and you're going to do it my way. And now if you want that hire, it's, I'm paying the money, but I need your feedback. What's going to keep you here? What's going to make this money valuable to you? how will you stick around? It's a really different workplace to be in. So I love that you shared and was honest about that.
It really is. And I think that the second piece to that is I would have the mentality of like, well, look at this work that I'm doing. Nobody else can do this. And it was definitely having like a negative connotation. How I would view others was like, yes, it wasn't just me being confident. It was also me looking down on what others couldn't do instead of
Right.
valuing what they could do and what they did bring to the table. Well, no, they can't do what I'm doing. That's what I'm there to do.
Right.
And
Right.
they're there to do something else, and they have a different skill set that is equally as valuable. And I think that's another trap that we get into as owners is we tend to hire people that look like us, that similarly work like us, that act like us, that whatnot. But to recognize that we are all created differently, and I believe for a purpose, because we need to be able to work together to cover all of the spectrum of the things that need to get done. And
Yeah.
we all have different value. And I looked down on the things that people couldn't do as well as me, instead of valuing like, wow, you really do. I have no desire to do that. Like,
Right.
and you were created to do that. So we need to work together, instead of looking at what I was doing was more valuable. And I think a lot of that had to do with age and just, not having jobs before and looking at what I was doing and, oh, wow, look at how great I am. And so I think that that was a very big part of me determining like who I want to be as I grew up.
Right.
I, like I said, I never had any bad interactions or with anybody at work per se, like couldn't figure out a project together or collaborate or anything. That was always very strong, but I always really felt like I was better, that my work was better than theirs, and that I was carrying the team. And
Hmm.
even if that was true, it's accepting that that's how I was created to be. I was created to lead this team, and I can't look down on them because they weren't. You know what I mean? Like they may not, everyone has the same desires and drive to want to lead a team. They might just be like, hey, you tell me what to do, I'll execute it. Because guess what? I don't want to execute everything. I'm really good at making sure that it happens, but do I want to go and do everything? No. But there are absolutely people who are like, I don't want to make those decisions. I don't want that responsibility. You just let me know, I'll get it done.
Right.
And that is okay, and that's so valuable. And I think that's another area where I feel like I really failed early in my career, my 20s. I'm saying like really, really early, getting to navigate through the workplace. And I had to learn, like, I didn't have to mask myself and be like the older male boardroom that I was striving to be. I didn't need to be like that. I didn't need to be like
Right.
them to bring value to the table, because that's really the situation that I was in. I was emulating what I was seeing and seeing how I was thinking of others, which I never really thought of before that. I had to make that decision, like, is this who I want to be? And the answer was obviously no. I don't want to be that way. And I don't like
And
how
I
it
do think
feels.
that vulnerability is a huge strength. And it took me a long time to realize that, because I have four brothers and I'm tough. And I, grew up on a car lot, and I was around sales and was hearing sales, from a kid all the way up. So, I was really kind of, to the point and get it done. And my business absolutely transformed when I started to become more vulnerable. And
Yeah.
when I just started to lighten up, because guess what? I don't have to be that tough, and I don't have to do all those things because I put people in place to help with it. My greatest assistant was, I'm a high D personality, high DI. And so I would go up and down like this, like most, CEOs and business owners do. And I had a steady assistant. So I could come up, down, and she never got flustered. She never got upset. She never raised her voice. She never whatever. I'd come in, and so when you're saying you need to hire people who are not like you, that is true. I mean, in certain roles, right? There's some
Absolutely.
things that,
Absolutely. Yeah.
but that's why those things are in place. So, all right, last question. Curious, where do you see yourself investing resources for growth over the next year?
It's really right now in business development, figuring out new ways. The market's changing, people are learning different things. Outsourcing some of the services that we do was unheard of 5 years ago. Outsourcing operations, figuring out how to do process or even supervising a department, like that's unheard of I can go outside for that. People are starting to understand what that is now. So there's a lot less, there's still some education as far as what we do. But in terms of social media, strategy and executing all that, there's no education involved in that. So my strategy in sales is definitely going to be different and evolving now that, I think the workforce is starting to learn different options for how to run their business. And so I think investing in that to grow my business is really where I'm going to be spending my time and attention right now. That's really where a lot of my focus is figuring out the best fit for us in terms of marketing and really getting in front of people who need us and are looking for us, or maybe just don't necessarily know that they're looking for us, but to get our message out there that, hey, you don't have to do this alone, and these are services that help with these types of feelings and emotions and things that you're really going through, but these are very tangible, effective solutions that help in your business too. So that's really the message that I want to get across. And that's where my investment needs to come into play in the future.
Yeah. And isn't it, Seth got in that says, your vibe attracts your tribe.
Oh yeah. I love that.
And he talks about you attract the people you're supposed to get, through your marketing efforts. You don't have to be everything to everybody. You don't have to be on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, all of that. You can do one and just do it really well. And whatever you're putting out, you're getting what you're supposed to get and the right people that you're supposed to work with, as opposed to, I'll do anything. I'll work with everybody. Just keep the lights on, pay the bills, and really more be very selective. And
also I think you said something about vulnerability too. And that changed when we changed our branding. My branding was very much starting off, not really focused on me and my team. And I brought somebody in, Bree, who's actually our social media consultant that works with us and our clients. And she just was like, you need to be showing you, people want to see you. That's what it's all about. And it took years to do. And that was one of the things that you touched on, was like, oh yeah, it's very personal. Like I can see you and your team. And I think that's the thing that makes the difference with our branding and being able to be vulnerable with yourself, but it does play out in your company as well. And like you said, puts out a different vibe and attracts a different, if you're totally, completely transparent with who you are, what you're doing, showing yourself in a way that's true and transparent and vulnerable, it does attract the people that you're really truly looking for. And so I think that it's full circle. It comes all the way. It affects everything. So when you work on you and those things, and you're trying to grow those areas, it affects your company and everything you do, all the way down to your marketing efforts.
Yeah, that's true. It's true. All right. So you wanted to give something to our listeners. So why don't you tell them what that is and how they can get it?
Oh, sure. Well, if any of this stuff resonates with anyone and they maybe want to learn more, we offer a breakthrough call. It's usually a $250 value, but I've on our website, if you go to our contact page and just sign up for it, and the drop down is breakthrough call, you don't have to put any code or anything. It's just for, these listeners. We've changed our settings on there so you can just go in and choose that. It's an hour. We'll talk about your biggest pain points, walk you through some strategies that may help, and at the very least walk away with just some new ideas and areas that maybe you need to prioritize and focus on, because if you're too stuck in the details of day to day and that resonated with you, we can at least do that. At the very most, maybe see if there's some solutions that we offer that might be potentially good for you. But I think either way, valuable time spent. But that's something that, if anybody wanted to take advantage of, go to our website, seekersolution.com, and just go to our contact page and sign up.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks so much for being here today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.